Automation post-game scoreboard show. I got to be honest, Will, I thought that I was going to be opening this show on Sunday morning, but here we are, a Saturday night, 11:51 as my clock says, and
Beautiful.
the Ducks victorious once again, 34-13. They beat the UCLA Bruins, the number 8 team in the land, stays undefeated to improve to 4-0 coming off their bye week, and we will get into all of it. Ryan Buckley here with you, doing the heavy lifting and the analysis tonight, my friend Will Ortner on the other side of the glass. Excuse me. Willie, how are we doing tonight?
Not too bad, man. I've had my shoes off for a while. The dogs are out, the dogs were out for the Oregon defense. They got after it, really shut down UCLA's offense. And look, offensively, there were a lot of good things, but there were also some weird bad things that keep popping up that worry me. And I'm sure we're going to get into all of that and more here coming up soon.
Yeah, a 21-point victory is one that is hard to have really many issues with, especially when it looks as good as it did for 29 minutes and 45 seconds in the first half.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It was pretty good until the last 8.
Yeah, exactly right. But so we'll get into all of that. I saw an interesting note, though, on Twitter. This blew me away. Tonight's win, Oregon over UCLA, the Ducks' biggest win at the Rose Bowl ever in their history. 21 points. It eclipses their previous high of 18. They'd beaten UCLA in 2003 and 1989. So
is that only against UCLA? Because I feel like they beat Florida State way worse than that in that Rose Bowl. Tony Washington ran the ball back for them to win by like 25.
You know
right?
what? That's a good question. It might just be over UCLA, but now I have to check the box score for that one. I will do that in one of the breaks here. But let's talk a little bit about this football game because the first thing I want to get to, this team is so loaded on offense, and obviously, the defense has been nothing to sneeze at. But most of the headlines throughout the first 3 games of the season, the first 3 weeks or 4 weeks if you include the bye week, have been about the offense. Mm-hmm. But this week was, at least this game for me, was all about the defense. They did not allow a touchdown. The only touchdown UCLA scored was on the interception return. So they allowed 2 field goals all game. They were nearly perfect. They got up in Ethan Garber's kitchen plenty of times. They essentially knocked him out of the game. They put so much pressure on. They were dominant on the defensive front. They were dominant on the back end. They come up with a couple turnovers. Those takeaways had been lacking so far for this unit as well. But there was a lot to like at all 3 levels of the defense. When you looked at what Oregon did today, what stood out to you, Will?
I really like what the defensive line did getting after the quarterback. Again, another big game for Harmon. We keep mentioning him. He's got 1.5 tackles for loss in this game. He has a half sack. I felt like Birch was flying around, especially early. Now, he didn't have as many tackles as he normally does, but they were both for a loss. They were both in the backfield. Mm-hmm. They were both in big situations on like, hey, it's a 1st and 10. Now you're starting the other team behind the sticks. And it was obvious all game that UCLA, whether it was quarterback or whether it was the running backs, they didn't feel comfortable at all. They didn't get anything really going. Aside from the drive to start the game, they also didn't have many drives that strung together. Like, even their second field goal drive, they started at like the 35. Yeah. They got 1 or 2 first downs. There were a couple penalties in there that helped move them forward. That's why UCLA was in that game. Well, able to score in those situations. Aside from the first drive, you dominated them.
Mm-hmm. I want to remind everybody out there are a number of ways that you can reach us tonight. And being that this show is so late in the evening / morning, I want to get to all of your thoughts. So if you have thoughts about the Ducks game, you got questions for Will to analyze the game, let us know. You can reach us on the Vancouver Ford text line, 503-864-6326. That's 503-8646-FAN. Also, our YouTube channel. We are streaming over on YouTube at 1080 The Fan. The comments are open there as well. So let us know your thoughts on the game and really thoughts going ahead into Michigan State and the rest of the season, because I think there was a lot to like tonight, and there's a lot we want to clean up, as Will had mentioned as well. But before we get into any more of that, I should get this out of the way. Let's do our Ducks Game Day secret score.
Ducks Game Day Secret Score.
The Ducks game day secret score is 172. That's 172. Remember that secret score and listen in the 7 a.m. Monday morning hour of Dirt and Sprague. And listen for that cue to text in. If you win, you'll get the $100 gift card to Laurelhurst Market. It's more than just your friendly neighborhood steakhouse. Make your reservation today at laurelhurstmarket.com. Will, that number of 172, the total yards that Oregon allowed all day to UCLA. Pretty impressive mark.
Yeah, I mean, most of those are on that first drive where they go for 60 something, if I remember right. I don't have the thing up in front of me right now. So basically, half of the yards that you gave up, or a little less than that, you gave up for in the first quarter. After that, you lock everything down. Sometimes the other team does a good job of having a scripted out 10. Like you hear all the time about, first 10 or first 12, first 15. Coaches do it different where they come into a game and basically they're able to script up the plays that they want to run because they know how the defense is going to attack them. And then after that, it becomes your feel for the game as an offensive coordinator or your feel for the game as a defensive coordinator. Do you get more aggressive in blitz? Do you sit back and pass coverage? Are you more of a man team? Are you more of a zone team? And it felt like after UCLA got out of their scripted first 10, 12, whatever it was, Lopoy and Oregon's defense was able to shut down UCLA's offense, and they weren't able to do anything at all.
And now I'm looking at the drive log. You're right. So 66 yards for UCLA on their first drive. But then you look after that. The next drive, 1 play, -5 yards, interception. The next drive, 3 plays, -2 yards, punt. The next drive, 3 plays, 4 yards, punt. The next drive, 3 plays, -5 yards, punt. Oregon's defense was absolutely dominant after that first drive, and then they forced a punt in their first in the first possession of the next half as well. It's just the way that they continued throughout this game. They didn't allow they allowed a 6-play field goal drive. You said they only got 17 yards on that other scoring drive. You mentioned how far up UCLA was able to start on that drive. That was because Oregon had a 7-yard punt. So there are things to love about what Oregon's defense did because after the first drive and through the middle of this game, Oregon's defense was nails.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like whatever they wanted to do defensively, whether it was bringing pressure, whether it was sitting back in coverage, they were able to just completely shut down this UCLA team. I was very impressed again. Obviously, Bryce Betcher, not a big tackle game for him, right? But he comes up with the timely interception. He's in the right place at the right time. And it wasn't one of those things where Garbers just threw the ball and Bryce is sitting there and it hits him. Like Bryce has to go make a big time play on it.
Made a play on it, yeah.
Right? It's the same thing for Johnson. Like he has to go out and make an incredible catch to get that interception. Then you have other times where every time it felt like Garber was trying to throw the ball, there was an Oregon Duck there. So he either had to be perfect or it was going to be an overthrow or there was going to be an Oregon Duck making a play at an interception. And when you get these types of turnovers, which I do feel were kind of lacking early on in the season, when you start becoming a defense that turns other teams over, it's a big momentum shift for you. I mean, just look at this game. You had a big momentum shift. You're going down at the end of the half to score a touchdown. Your quarterback throws a pick six, and I feel like it affected you through the entire third quarter.
Agreed.
If you can go out and you can turn over teams and you can continue to win that turnover margin, all of a sudden, a 21-point win can turn into a 35-point win, and it can happen just at the snap of a finger.
Yeah, you mentioned Jordan Birch a couple minutes ago, and I wanted to point him out because I feel like one of the things that people have said about him in the offseason, as well as even at times this season, is that if you could just get 100% of Jordan Birch on every play, you'd have this amazing player, and he's such a physical freak. I think tonight we saw flashes of all the things that he's able to do and do well. On back-to-back plays, he had a tackle for a loss and he had a sack. And then later in the second half, maybe the most impressive play I saw from him is one that won't get registered on the stat sheet at all. But it was a mesh or zone option by Garbers and the running back. And Burge committed to the running back, tackled the running back, got up, and nearly made the tackle on the quarterback too. Like he was right behind the play.
Guy,
if it weren't for the linebacker being like filling the hole and being there, Birch would have tackled 2 guys on the same play and gotten up off of his knees to do it. Like it was just he. And then who else did that tonight was Harmon did that tonight. He was knocked to the ground, got back up and got half a sack on a play that I thought he was out of.
Right. Well, the defense, they're flying around making plays. What's interesting about this team is the last 2 years when you've seen this Lanning Lapoy defense, you've seen it's a constant rotation. Hey, you get 2 plays and then the next guy is in. 2 plays and the next guy. This game, obviously you're on the road, so you can't travel as many guys as you might normally, right? And so it's a thinner defensive group. That being said, when I'm going through here, all of your tackles are made primarily by 15 guys. That's not very normal from a Lanning team, but it doesn't feel like a lot of the effort has gone away. Like usually when you see a team where, hey, it's only 15 to 10 guys are making tackles, well, they also take a lot of plays off so that way they can feel good throughout the rest of the game. Taking 80 snaps in a college football game wears you down.
Mhm.
That's why it's so crazy what Travis Hunter is doing right now.
Yeah,
130 plays a game, it's absurd. I'd play 80 plays in a college game. Now, I'm not as athletic or as talented as a lot of these guys.
Oh, don't sell
but
yourself short. I see you and Travis Hunter as just being right there.
so similar. He's on a video game cover. I play the video game, basically the same. But what I'm saying is like I'd play 80 plays in a college football game. I couldn't move for 2 days, right? For a lot of these guys, they're not going to be able to move for 2 days. And that's not because of an injury. That's just how it works when you go through this many car wrecks. But to see guys continue to get up and try and make a play after making a mistake or pursuing 15 yards downfield if there's a big breakaway, constantly in the right lanes, but running to make a play. When a ball carrier is being held up by 2 others, you see 3 or 4 more ducks coming in. That's a big deal. It means you don't have loafs, and that's something that is effort, and that's something that those players can control. And if they're doing it at this level, that also means that a lot of the coaches are harping on it at practice and on film.
Well, let's turn the page here. Let's get over to the offensive side of the ball because there was a lot to like there as well. Dylan Gabriel, another very solid performance. If he could maybe just get that one pass back, pretty happy with what he did. Additionally, another great performance from Jordan James, another good performance from Tez Johnson. We will get into all of that coming up ahead on the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. But first, let's toss it over to weather. And Will, this time it's brought to you by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in store or online for pickup or delivery at victorricos.com. Here's Ortner.
Thanks, Buck. It's 55 degrees and clear in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for 70 degrees and sunny in Eugene when the Ducks take on the Spartans of Michigan State next Friday.
Looking for a better primary care experience? Welcome to Zoom Care. Zoom Care is here for more than urgent needs. We can be your PCP too. Our primary care team has grown and is currently accepting new patients. Don't wait for the care you need. You can have your first visit with one of our many providers within 48 hours. And we take most insurances. Why wait weeks for an appointment when you can be seen today? Learn more about establishing primary care at zoomcare.com. Zoom Care. Beyond better healthcare.
You're home for Oregon. Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. Ryan Buckley, Will Ortner here with you. And let me be the first to wish you good morning. Happy Sunday. Lots of texts coming in on the Vancouver Ford text line. One from one of our favorite haters saying, running game still an issue. Play calling is terrible. No improvement on offense. The Ducks came off a bye and looked like S against a terrible UCLA team. Ohio State's going to blow them out.
Maybe.
Ohio State could blow them out. I think most of that is a little bit harsh. I will go ahead and move on to this next text that says, on the road versus a team full of guys who wanted to prove something versus Oregon. You're one slip up away from being up 35-3, and it's a complete blowout. They did seem to lose focus after that, which isn't ideal, but there was never a thought of them losing. Totally agree with that text.
It's the duality of man. Some of that is someone's trying to troll a little bit with the other one. Look, is there a chance that this Oregon team gets blown out by Ohio State? Yeah.
Maybe.
Isn't there also a possibility that they go in and they handle business? Like, I seem to remember the last time that Oregon and Ohio State played each other.
No one gave them a chance.
Everyone had pretty much said that game was over because of how they played against Fresno State. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say everything that I saw from this Oregon team tonight is going to lead to them beating Ohio State. That's just not where they're at right now. But at the same time, you're dealing with a lot of circumstances here that you're not going to deal with in a lot of the rest of your games.
Yeah.
Like, you played the game at 8:00 at night. No one was there in the stadium, so you got to come with your own juice. You have a momentum shift. You come out flat at halftime. Is it ideal? No. Are there things that you need to fix? Yes. There are still issues in the red zone. You need to come away with more points. You cannot have the boneheaded, no focus penalties that keep popping up on this offensive line and really in this offensive unit as a whole. That being said, there's plenty to work on. Tez Johnson keeps getting open. Trayshawn Holden has another big time play. Jordan James, hey, it wasn't his best game.
It was still...
He ran for 5 a carry.
Yep, still got over the century mark.
103. He averaged 5 a carry. The problem is we were so spoiled last year because him and Bucky were averaging 8 and 6 every single game that you think, oh, this Oregon team, they're worse than they were last year. They've taken a step back. It's not as clean as it was last year, but the sky isn't falling. Go to bed. Touch grass.
It probably looks bad for Jordan James because he was averaging 7 yards a carry coming into this game. But we'll get to a couple more of the texts from the Vancouver Ford text line coming in because there are a couple more that I want to get to, some good thoughts about what transpired tonight in Pasadena. But I want to talk about some of the positives on offense because we can kind of nitpick a little bit and find out the medicine that Oregon's going to need to take in this week leading up to Michigan State in a segment coming up here. But there was a lot to like here. You talked about Jordan James, again, 5 yards a carry guy. Tez Johnson, I know, is someone we're going to have more for later. And take away that one pass, Dylan Gabriel's doing his thing again, too. So when you looked at the totality, Will, of the offense's performance tonight, what stood out to you from a positive standpoint?
From a positive standpoint, I mean, your quarterback's standing upright for the most part. He's not having to deal with getting pressured.
Yep.
The interception, that's a strictly Dylan Gabriel issue. It's not like, he was being pressured and then he threw a bad ball. He goes to throw the ball to Tez Johnson. Tez Johnson slips and falls. Your wide receiver's not there. You got to just tuck it and run. But
he probably should have tried to eat it, but
I think
for whatever reason he didn't.
I think he came around the corner and just expected Tez to be there.
Yeah.
And right as he's winding up for his throw, Tez falls, right? And so he can't really pull back, but he kind of tries. It's too late. You've already gone. It's like when a batter is up in the plate and the pitcher throws a good curveball. Batter starts swinging and instantly the top drops off the ball and it's like, leave your bat out there. Hopefully it nicks it and I get another at bat. That's exactly what happened there. Running the ball wise, look, aside from the third quarter, I thought it looked pretty good. First quarter, you moved the ball when you wanted to. Second quarter, you moved the ball when you wanted to. The holes were open. It felt like the offensive line was on the same page the entire time. The issue was in the third quarter, you came out flat again, right? And so when I look at this offense as a whole, you had a bunch of big plays, and you just missed a couple others. So I feel like the offense, for the most part, did what I wanted them to do. You had a third quarter where you didn't live up to the standard. The first, second, and fourth quarters, You lived up to the standard,
Yep.
and you dominated this UCLA team.
And then additionally, we'll have to see what happens over the next week. Hopefully he's back right away. But really the only injury of note, it seemed, throughout the game was to their starting tight end, Terrence Ferguson, who got his bell rung by former Oregon Duck Brian Addison. But what that did, which I felt was interesting, and I've wanted to see more of anyways, is it gave Kenyon Sadiq a more prominent role today. He caught 4 passes for 37 yards. None of them were like crazy breakaway, but he's just still such an athlete that I like seeing him get more opportunity. And so whether Ferguson is back or not, I'd like to see them continue to try and distribute the ball to him, because I think he's got a lot to offer there.
I like the 2-point play, too, where he throws it over to Ferguson. That was fantastic.
Yep.
It still seems like the number 2 tight end is Herbert for whatever reason. I feel like Sadiq comes in more as a 13 personnel type guy. I also wonder if in certain situations it is 13 personnel, but really in their playbook it's 12, and they're using him as a true wide receiver H type position.
And for those who might not be as deep on the football lingo, just explain the difference there, what you mean as far as 13 versus 12.
Right. So 13 personnel means 1 running back, 3 tight ends, 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends, and then you do the math from there. There's 5 linemen always. You have a quarterback, and then that lets you know how many wide receivers are out, right? 13 personnel, usually more of a heavy rundown situation. But with this Oregon team, you have 2 tight ends who are extremely athletic and great in pass, catching the ball out of the backfield, catching and pass when the team wants to throw the ball. The difference even with Herbert, like, I'm out here saying he's not a good pass catcher. That's wrong. He's proven that he can do it too when the ball is put on him.
Sure.
So it just feels like they're trying to find different unique ways to use Sadiq, and there's a part of me that says, like, just sub him in at times at tight end. Like, just let him be him.
Let him run the same routes that Ferguson is running.
Right.
Yeah.
Stop trying to make him a gadget guy and just let him be a guy that has a gadget package.
I'm with that. I like that a lot. I think that's well said. As far as players that I think maybe aren't having the breakout we might expect, or one that I'm starting to scratch my head a little bit about, because we've only really seen him prominent in one game, is Evan Stewart. And obviously he's new here. Dylan Gabriel is too. Chemistry is a real thing, but for whatever reason, chemistry with Tez and Trayshawn seems to be pretty good for Gabriel. I don't know if it's something that Stewart's doing in the pass game. I don't know if it's a connection between them. I don't know if it's the plays that are being run, and I'm not sure you're going to be able to tell from that either. But are you concerned at all about the lack of production there?
No, not really, because remember the lack of production from Tez Johnson last year at this time?
Yep.
I remember being really confused, expecting Tez Johnson to actually overtake Troy Franklin, simply because his quarterback was his brother. Like, they grew up, I mean, obviously not all the way through, but like, they grew up playing high school football together. Like, that's what they did. You would think that in a moment of, I need someone, I need to throw the ball, it's 3rd and 3, I need to find my most trustworthy wide receiver, you would think that Bo Nix would have found Tez Johnson. And obviously he did as the season went on, but it never felt like Tez overtook that role from Troy Franklin. It felt like around week 7 or 8, Tez popped, and then he was able to become a big key point of that offense the rest of the way. There's no saying that Evan Stewart can't be that guy as it goes. It just shows to me that Tez Johnson, he popped. It's almost like he finally figured it out. Not that he wasn't doing well beforehand, but he exploded to being a wide receiver 1 type player. And then this year, he's just taking it and running with it. Like, maybe it's not Evan Stewart's fault that he only had a couple catches in this game.
Sure.
Maybe Tez Johnson was just open more. Maybe Tez Johnson made more guys miss him in pass coverage.
Maybe based on what's happened already, that's just the first place Dylan's looking right now, or it's the first thing in his progression.
I would.
There's a handful of reasons that could be the case.
I would, wouldn't you? Like, right now, you have a dude who's been in the system for 2 years, who knows all the routes, who also knows the different adjustments that he needs to make that will make that play work better, right? He knows how to get himself open easier. And he keeps scoring. He keeps finding ways to get open. He keeps finding ways to get in the end zone. That doesn't mean that Evan Stewart isn't open also. But if Evan Stewart is open on a hitch route, but I've got Tez Johnson one-on-one in a spot where he's going to continue to outrun the corner, why wouldn't I throw it up to him? He's proven that he can be successful. He keeps having big plays. He has a touchdown in every game so far this year.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep feeding that guy the ball.
He's unbelievable. I know we'll talk about him a little bit more later. Want to give you a chance to respond to this text as well. This one from the Vancouver 4 text line says, Will and Buck, can you please say something to get Ducks social media to chill the F out? Will Stein and our O-line were the greatest thing as ever until the pick six and momentum change. Then it was back to fire Stein. Our O-line is garbage, and we're going to lose at least 3 games in the Big Ten. For God's sake, let's see. Now, these are kids who dealt with a sudden momentum shift at 10 p.m. at night that deboed their backs. They did their thing, and the offense eventually got its mojo back. You think that our team is hot and cold? They've got nothing on some Duck fans.
I told that texter flat out, just ignore the crazies, man.
Yeah.
They're fans for a reason. Fans are fan is short for fanatics.
And the vocal minority is just that. They're the minority. They may be loud, but that doesn't speak for everybody. I think that most Duck fans should feel pretty content and satisfied in tonight's victory. It was nothing if not convincing. Are there things that you could pick apart? Absolutely. Will we do that? Yeah, we will. But you always talk about the game should look a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
For the first 29 and a half minutes, it absolutely looked that way, and there was never any doubt that it was going to go any other direction than that.
And honestly, for your defense, it largely looked like that as well.
Yeah.
Like the entire time.
The whole game.
Your offense took the third quarter off.
Your defense allowed 2 field goals all game, and one of them was after a 17-yard drive. So, and the other was on the first drive of the game. So that's about as much as you can ask from that unit. That's why we led the show with them. Just a fantastic performance from them. I want to turn the page here. Dusty Hara had the Toyota Sideline mic down in Pasadena, and I've been in communication with Dusty. It's also Sunday morning down in Pasadena. I don't know if you knew that too, Will, but it is.
Sure,
and he is about to be in an Uber on his way home to, well, not home, on his way back to Los Angeles, I think, where the team is staying. But we are going to get in touch with him. So coming up on the other side of the break, the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show, Dusty Hara will join us. We'll also get into a couple other things. We got to talk about some special teams concerns, as well as our Bellagio's very best player of the game and the national scoreboard. That's all ahead. But first, going to kick it over to Will with weather, brought to you by Victoricos Mexican Food. Order Victoricos for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com. Here's Ortner.
Thanks, Buck. 55 degrees and clear in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for 70 degrees and sunny in Eugene when the Ducks take on the Spartans of Michigan State on Friday.
Tired of hearing scary ads about the IRS? Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if
Problem solved.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. We're still trying to connect with Dusty Hara, and that will happen. But as you can imagine, down in the Los Angeles area, he's dealing with an Uber situation at 12:15 in the morning on 12:23 now on a Sunday morning. So the Ducks winners today, 34-13. Number 8 team in the land continues on undefeated 4-0. There are now 19 undefeated teams left, just 19. Coming up a little bit later in the show, Will, going to go through who those teams are and where you think Oregon belongs among them. I certainly don't think it's the top, but I don't think it's the bottom either.
I'd agree.
But what I did want to talk about, and it seems minor until it isn't. There are a handful of things that, like nits, that you could pick from this game, some issues. But one thing that kind of keeps just scratching at the back of my mind a little bit is the kicking situation. Not because it's horrible. It's not. It's fine. But tonight, in a game that was well in hand, you kick a ball out of bounds on the 53-yard wide field, which is just kind of rough. It's a penalty you don't need to take. And then you have another missed PAT. And you had a missed PAT against Boise that nearly cost you the game. You wouldn't have had to kick the game-winning field goal at the end had you made the PAT earlier. And listen, I think that Sappington is good. I saw what he did at Oregon State last year. It was impressive. I think he was 49 of 50 from PAT, and he was 13 of 14 on his field goals. Not the longest range, but I believed it was a good pickup. I thought it was going to be fine. There's something about not hitting those things in blowout games that just makes me a little bit concerned for things down the road. As a lineman, you ever have this feeling about your kickers?
I went through an entire year at Central Washington where we didn't have a single game where we made every PAT.
Wow.
That's a real thing that really happened in college for me. There's something to be said about you should be worried about it, but also at the same time, like on the extra point, as an offensive lineman, I'm playing as one of the interior blockers there. There was a lot of pressure in his face. So there are things that offensive line and backup offensive linemen that are probably on that position group for that special team that they can do that can help alleviate some of those issues. So for me, I'm always going to try and look inward instead of outward and blame others, like clean up your own house before you start blaming others for their issues.
So as far, and Dan Lanning's big on this, as far as cleaning up your own house, how do you feel like, actually, Will, I just texted with Dusty. I'm going to get your thought on this, and then we'll call him after the break. But so I'm wondering, when it comes to taking your medicine this week, when it comes to Dan Lanning and the things they're going to want to correct, outside of just the kicking, what are the things do you think this team focuses on as they get ready for their next game?
Red zone offense.
Okay.
Like, to me, red zone offense, it has to be better. You had a couple drives that ended up in field goals that I felt like you could have finished. And I know there's a 42-yard field goal in there. There's a 41. Those are just outside, technically, of the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
But it felt like even on the interception that was returned for a touchdown, like you left some stuff there. You could have ran the ball more efficiently. You didn't need as many penalties as you had in that drive. It felt like there were things, even on a couple of the scoring drives, like on Tez Johnson's first one, you had a weird alignment issue again. You had a hold issue again, where it's just do your job, right? As an offensive lineman, you're holding, or really you get caught holding, because you're putting yourself in a bad position, especially on a run play. If you take your proper angles and your aiming point, that hold's never going to be a problem. If the wide receivers catch the ball when they hit them in the hands and they don't drop it, your job is to catch the ball. That's what you're on scholarship for. Bring that ball in. As a running back, your job is to make a man miss. And it just felt like in big key, like third down moments where you're in plus territory, you're in a scoring spot, it just didn't feel like they got the job done. Or when they did get the job done, it wasn't as clean as it could have been.
Yeah. And then one other thing that you and I chatted about that I think maybe bears bringing up, the trick play stuff, because we've seen it a couple times now. Tonight we see a trick play that really should have worked, because
it was open.
Patrick Herbert was wide open, but it's already the start of a blowout situation, and you end up on. It was a 1st and 10 play where Tez Johnson overthrows Patrick Herbert on a pass, a backwards pass from Dylan Gabriel, essentially at the line of scrimmage. How do you feel about that play in that situation? And again, this is nitpicking. I thought that Will Stein called a great game. I thought that most of the weapons that he had were put in great positions today. I don't know if you need that there and whether that's the right thing to be doing those situations. I'm not sure when the right time is. I think if it works, we say, what a great call. That was awesome. But, here we are.
It's easy to play the result. So, like, for me, when I look at that, the result is fine. You got a wide receiver, a tight end in this situation, who's wide open. No one's there. Tez Johnson just has to put the ball on him. And if he's able to do that, we're talking about what a great play it is. He isn't able to do that. You don't end up, getting the first down on the drive, and you end up having to get a field goal. So we're going to complain about it. I don't hate the aggressive nature of it. It also shows, like, Coach Stein, Coach Lanning, they are aggressive by nature, and they're going to dial up different things that they can take advantage of. At the same time, I feel like we see a lot of these trick plays in games that don't really matter. And so are you putting that on film so that Ohio State, Michigan, UW, these teams that are good and they're going to be better later on as your schedule goes, are you putting it on film so that they're like, well, I guess we have to pay attention just in case Tez Johnson throws the ball? But if you never use it in a big game situation, why would you spend more than, hey, this is something they've done before?
Yeah.
Make sure you're accountable to your job.
Exactly right, which then to me almost makes it feel like a waste, and I'm not sure that it is, but it also feels maybe superfluous as well. So let's turn the page here. Let's get Dusty Hera in here. I believe the Uber situation has been rectified. So we'll get Dusty in, get his thoughts from the sideline down at the Rose Bowl tonight. But first, we'll kick it over to Will, who has the weather, brought to you by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com. Here's Ortner.
Thank you, Buck. It's 55 degrees and clear in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for 70 degrees and sunny in Eugene when the Ducks take on the Spartans of Michigan State next Friday.
We're back with a complete recap of today's game.
Here's trips out to the right, and now just running back, and it looks like Woodington. Here's Keaton now back to throw. Wanting to go deep down the field, and he has got him. It is Tez. Touchdown, Oregon.
With the coaches and players you want to hear, your feedback on the contest, scores and highlights from across the country, and analysis from your game day crew. This is the Ducks Postgame Scoreboard Show on 1080 The Fan. Oregon Ducks football on 1080 The Fan is brought to you by Coors Light, Pacific Office Automation, Mods BDX, Victorico's Mexican Food, Legends Casino Hotel in Toppenish, by Zoom Care, Bellagio's Pizza, Multnomah County Behavioral Health Division, Audi Wilsonville, Laurelhurst Market, by Unitas Community Credit Union, and by Langdon Farms Golf Club. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Buckley and Will Ortner. The Ducks Postgame Scoreboard Show on 1080 The Fan.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. The Ducks victorious, the number 8 team in the land, takes care of UCLA 34-13, the final from Pasadena. And the man who was on the sidelines to witness it, Dusty Hera, is with us now. Dusty, Uber situation under control?
Yeah. It's hard to get out of the Rose Bowl. Shout-outs to Danny, who just picked me up. She is awesome. So not only do I have a great co-host in Danny Meringue, but I got a great driver in Danny right now picking me up from the Rose Bowl. Less than ideal to get out of the Rose Bowl after a football game.
I've done it a handful of times. You are absolutely right. If you have a car waiting for you when you leave, that is the best scenario, but that is not easy to come by. And also, when you first said there that shout out to Danny for picking you up, I'm like, wait a second. Your co-host was down in L.A. and just showed up at the Rose Bowl to give you a lift at, oh, by the way, good morning, 12:30 a.m.? Jeez.
Yeah, it's very early. I thought Jorgie hit the nail on the head when we were about midway through the fourth quarter, and he says it's 7 a.m. in London right now, which that was a bit of a curveball to us all. But, man, that 8 o'clock kick, the Big Ten After Dark, they're new to this. It's nothing new to fans on the West Coast, though. But it's a late one when you get out of that stadium at midnight.
Yeah, man, and I lamented this to Will already, but I'm sitting at home thinking, oh, the reason it's 8 must be because there's like a 5 o'clock game leading into it, or they got a pregame show or something. No, it was an episode of Chicago Fire, at least where I was. So
Yep.
I don't really understand the rhyme or reason, but that's beside the point. You had and every week have a really unique perspective because you are on the field, right around the team. What or who stood out to you tonight from the win?
Boy, Jordan Birch really stood out. I mean, he was a man on a mission all night long. I thought the defensive line really played well, and it was interesting to see all game long. Kayvon Thibodeau was on the sideline from start to finish,
I saw
and
that.
it wasn't just like he was a guy that was just standing there and taking in the game and just there to party on a Saturday night. He was coaching up Jordan Birch and the defensive line every single series, every single play. He would see something, he'd yell in from the sideline, long arm in or bull rush. And you could see he and Jordan Birch have a really interesting connection. I mean, they never played together at Oregon, but you could tell that whatever it is, their connection.
Dusty, what are you noticing on the drives where the Oregon Ducks weren't able to hit home? Like, you had a couple field goals, which is great, but you want those to end in 6 or 7 and not into 3. What was going wrong for the Ducks where they got into good position to score but weren't able to finish it off?
Yeah, that was interesting. It was a little bit frustrating, too, at times because you sat there and you look at the stat sheet and you say at halftime, Oregon is averaging 5 yards a carry, right? It was like 4.8 yards per carry at halftime, but this offense is throw to run, right? And when they got into those red areas, it was like they didn't feel comfortable running the ball necessarily. And that was an interesting kind of development this week. And UCLA did a really good job of loading up. And I thought there were missed opportunities where, whether it was a miscommunication or, it seemed like Dylan Gabriel was really locking on to Tez Johnson tonight and trying to feed him the ball. But those drives just seemed to stall out early in the game. And I think really the Terrence Ferguson injury, that slowed this offense down more than I thought it would. And his value, not just in the passing game as a big target on third down and a safety blanket for Dylan Gabriel, but also his value in the running game is immense. He mixes it up on the edge, and it hasn't just been the offensive line rotation. It has been Terrence Ferguson as a blocker, sealing the edge and taking one-on-one blocks that has really opened things up. And I think that kind of hurt in that second half with the offense, just not able to get drives going in that third quarter.
Yeah, it led to an interesting scenario not having Ferguson in. We got a little bit more of Kenyon Sadiq, which I am always for. The guy is such a ridiculous athlete. But going back to what you were mentioning before about Gabriel locking on to Tez Johnson a little bit, do you feel like that is kind of become habit or go-to for him, and is what maybe is behind his chemistry with Tez versus everybody else? I was asking Will a little bit if he's concerned at all about the lack of production from Evan Stewart outside of his one big game. Obviously, you love everything you're getting from Tez, but does it seem like that's clearly where Dylan wants to go with the ball?
Yeah, it appears, and everything that Will Stein does is matchup based, right? And it appeared that tonight UCLA was really focused on taking Evan Stewart away. I mean, you saw they tried to get him going with a couple of screens, and there were two guys just rallying to blow those screens up. And it was that was apparent. They didn't want 7 to beat him. But 15 is just that speed you can't teach. And I think the mastery of the offense with Tez, that's why the confidence is there with Dylan Gabriel. And he wants to get him the ball because he knows where he's going to be, and he knows exactly where he's going to be. And they have a really good rapport and chemistry between quarterback and receiver. But sometimes you also have to trust the system, trust the play call. And I think that at times, Dylan Gabriel just, when the first read isn't there, it's boom. All right, where's Tez? Where's 15 at?
Yeah.
Which isn't a bad option.
No,
right? I mean,
no.
It wasn't a bad option for him tonight. But I think as you get to better competition, and when you play, Ohio State, and moving forward when you have better teams like Michigan's defense, those are going to be teams that they're going to take two guys away from you. And you have to be ready to go and trust everybody else to get through those reads.
So you're a former wide receiver, Dusty. What do the other wide receivers have to do to get into a spot where they have built up that chemistry?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because, I mean, it's not just making plays, right? It's, you have to, if you run a corner route, for example, right, it's got to be exactly in the same spot, and it's got to be exactly what Dylan Gabriel sees too, right? If you have a too high look and you're going to kind of bend it a little bit flatter, right? He's going to throw to a spot. He's not going to throw to you because windows are so tight. And I think that, that long touchdown throw to Tez was a great example of Dylan Gabriel didn't throw to Tez Johnson. He threw to a spot on the field and trusted that Tez was going to be there, right?
Yeah.
And that is something that just comes with reps. It comes with what you're seeing in practice and those guys being in those spots during practice. So, I mean, it's not like it can't happen, but you got to have that faith a little bit more. And I think that, there was a throw that Dylan had to Trayshawn Holden in the middle of the field where there was a defender in front of him, a defender kind of behind him, and Gabriel threw to sit him down. And Trayshawn just kept going, right? That's that rapport, right? Tez sits that down, and he's in that spot. And that just comes with a little bit more time and a little bit more patience with your receivers.
So I know that something that Coach Lanning brings up frequently is taking your medicine, going to the doctor. What are the things that they're going to focus on this week? Because there was so much to like about this game. You're defensively really dominant throughout, save for the first drive of the game, and then you give up 3 on a 17-yard drive. But otherwise, you keep them out of the end zone. I mean, it was a fantastic effort there. What are the things you expect them to want to clean up in this next week leading into the Michigan State game?
I think penalties were kind of reared their head, and it wasn't just like the penalty yardage, the piling up and being egregious, but it was where the spots and the penalties happen, right? Drive killers, momentum killers. I think that is something on the defensive side. And look, UCLA, they went at Nico Reed, and like your secondary is going to go to the doctor. You saw Dante Manning come in late. And I thought Nico Reed played really well. He was in really good position a lot of the times. Sometimes Ethan Garber's, he has streaks where you go, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Daniel Jones, where you go, oh, yeah, that's it right there. And then you go, oh, no, right? But when he is on and he hits, he puts the ball in spots that nobody else can get it. And so I think that you kind of go to the doctor in a little bit of those situations. But, like, that's nitpicking, right? Your defense didn't allow a touchdown.
Yep.
And UCLA went 1 of 10 on third down. They played really dang good football tonight.
Yep, they absolutely did. Did you catch any of that Alabama-Georgia game?
Oh, my goodness. I had to go down to the sidelines, like, late in the game.
Uh-huh.
I didn't even know Georgia took the lead.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I get this alert that, oh, my gosh, Bama has a 75-yard touchdown. Carson Beck throws a pick late. And this is the thing about it. Like, everybody wants to say, the Boise State game, that was an ugly win, right? Well, at least it ended up in a win. And didn't end up in a loss, because we saw this weekend a lot of these teams, they didn't end up pulling out a win. They ended up on the wrong side of it. And as you go down, they don't have to be pretty, but they got to be, clean in the win column. And that's where Oregon has been all season long.
That's right. Added one more in the left column, and that is all that counts. Dusty, safe travels in your Uber. Safe travels back up to Portland. I guess, are you coming home tomorrow? Is that it?
Yep. My flight leaves at 7:30 in the morning, so I'm going to go get 3 hours of sleep and then head to the airport.
Beautiful. Well, as always, great work on the sideline. Thank you for joining us on the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show, and safe travels.
Yep. Shout out to Danny, my Uber driver.
Yeah, shout out to Danny, your Uber driver, and Danny, your co-host. You can listen to them noon to 3, Monday through Friday. And also, be sure to check out the Program podcast.
Yeah, that's right. All right, fellas. Have a good night.
Take care, Dusty. Appreciate it, man. That is Dusty Hara. You can, of course, listen to him at noon to 3, Monday through Friday. Danny and Dusty right here on The Fan. Coming up, I want to get to some clown stuff, Will. I saw some clown stuff on the
Yay.
UCLA side of the field, and it's late or it's early, and I'm feeling punchy, so we're going to get into it. That's coming up next on the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. But first, Will has the weather, brought to you by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Thanks, Buck. It's 55 degrees and clear in Portland. The Ducks post-game forecast calls for 70 degrees and sunny in Eugene when the Ducks take on the Spartans of Michigan State next Friday.
Looking for a career that offers great pay and benefits? Apply for a job that
Kenyon Sadiq. And I don't mind that wrinkle. If you get a look that you like and you think the math works out for you, go ahead, take that shot. It wasn't something that was going to matter tonight, but you never know. You might find yourself in a situation during the season where it does matter. Ryan Buckley, Will Ortner here with you on an early morning edition of the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. Yes, it is Sunday morning following a Saturday night game. The Ducks winners, 34-13 over UCLA. Their biggest win ever over UCLA at the Rose Bowl. I did check the numbers, Will. Yeah, they beat Florida State by 39 in the Rose Bowl in the college football playoff. But the 21 point.
That's a no countsies then?
I was there. It freaking counted. I can tell you that much. It counted. But the number I read you earlier, their biggest win at the Rose Bowl, that must be a regular season win.
It has to be
at the Rose Bowl. But alas, 21 points, a win on the road. You'll take it any way you can get it. But I had some gripes tonight, Will, and I don't usually do this and just beat my chest and shout about college kids and being losers and stuff like that. But that's what I'm going to do right now.
Ooh.
And I should pump the brakes. I'm not going to go quite that far, but there were a couple things I saw specifically from UCLA's secondary tonight that I wasn't thrilled about. And granted, this kind of thing is going to happen to you when you play teams that aren't very good, when you're very good and they have something to prove, and when they're getting their butts kicked. And So there are going to be instances this season where Oregon may have to deal with stuff like this, but the shot that knocked Terrence Ferguson out of the game, I kind of had a problem with for a handful of reasons. One, listen, if the guy, I don't care who he is, if the guy's playing the game hard, that's totally fine. But it looked like he had a legitimate play on the ball, and he went forearm right into Ferguson's head. So to me, it kind of looked like a cheap shot. Oh, and by the way, he was your teammate a year ago, or maybe it was 2 years ago, but former Duck who did it. Then after the hit, with Ferguson laying on the ground, flexes standing over him, and then takes a step away and goes palms up, like, I don't know what, like. So you hit him hard enough that you thought that you should tell everybody, you should show everybody how big and strong and cool you are. And then 2 seconds later, you're like, what? I don't know what y'all are talking about. The thing that you just flexed about, dummy. Like, what are we doing here?
Right.
And so that, I mean, didn't love that. And then on top of it, you got a play later in the game in the fourth quarter where Trayshawn Holden is out on the perimeter, and maybe the guy's just trying to make a play, but the horse collar, like, face mask tackle he got could have been something that injured Holden. Didn't, thankfully. But then Holden hits the ground, his knee's definitely down, he rolls over once and the ball comes out, and these guys are scooping it up, running it all the way the other way. I mean, yeah, the refs didn't blow it dead, I guess, play it like it's live. But then on top of it, if you saw the replay, Holden got face palmed. He got pie-faced by, like, another dude. And that wasn't even, that's like, okay, so it's not really a headshot. It's just, you know, a guy doing a face palm, whatever. But then you had a kick return or a kickoff for Oregon where one of their dudes dropped a helmet and cheap shot helmet to helmet on one of the Oregon gunners. I don't know. Maybe it's UCLA's brand of football now. Maybe they just aren't that disciplined, but it seemed like at least their whole unit had some issues with, I don't want to say towing the line, but like going a little further over the edge. And I thought it was interesting that at the end of the game, when Tez ran through Brian Addison, he had a little something for him. Because if you saw in the play that Terrence Ferguson got knocked out, and this was not knocked out, but got knocked out of the game and presumably concussed, Dylan Gabriel ran down the field and got in Brian Addison's face. And I loved seeing that from the quarterback. And Dylan Gabriel's not going to do anything. Like, he's smarter than that. But I liked that, one, none of the Oregon receivers reacted in a way that was going to get them into trouble. But two, that you had a quarterback going down the field, standing up for his guy, being like, yo, man, that was whack. And I don't know. You've played this game, Will. I have not. I think it could be just, in Addison's case, he's got extra juice for this game because it's his old team. And I know when you're trying to get hyped up and play this game, you're getting right up to the edge without trying to go over. And sometimes that just happens. But how did you read or react to some of the either behavior or antics or play of the UCLA secondary tonight?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to understand that there are times where, especially in Addison's situation, you're never going to see that dude more keyed up than he was for that game.
For sure.
He was at Oregon. It became pretty obvious to him that he would not be playing at Oregon anymore. And if he wanted to play college football, he needed to go somewhere else. So he goes to somewhere else. They're not as good. And he views this as a, I'm going to get mine type of game. I'm going to show them what they're missing. And honestly, I felt like he had a pretty good game. You know, yes, he's might have went over the line on a play or two. Sometimes you hit someone so hard that you're so jacked up that you just jump up and you're, yeah, I let him know. And then it's like, oh,
yeah,
okay, you know what? Maybe that wasn't like the cleanest hit, or maybe that wasn't like the best spot. Sometimes too, like the Ferguson one to me is kind of a bang bang type of deal.
Yeah.
And Addison can be looking at that as like, I'm gonna, instead of going for the ball, like,
I'm just gonna separate him from it.
I'm gonna put a lick on him. Yeah. Like, I'm gonna make sure he feels me. But I mean, he also had a pick six in this game. So I feel like Addison was just a little bit over keyed up. Yeah. And then sometimes too, you have to realize, like, when it comes to secondary players, half the time they celebrate, they didn't do anything anyways. How many times have you seen a corner do the lockdown or the not over here type deal? And it's like, that ball was thrown 10 yards over your head. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, but it's a good thing your coverage was tight, though.
Right. As an offensive lineman, I hated nothing more than stupid corners who would, taunt us like, oh, I just shut that play down. No, you got beat by 5. Our quarterback just threw it 10 yards over our own guy's head. If he throws it 5 yards over your head, I'm dancing in your face too. So it's just kind of part of the game. Sometimes you got to be right up there to it. If you don't hear a whistle, you got to go and get on that ball. So if the UCLA players didn't hear a whistle, I mean,
That's fair.
I think Jerry heard a whistle. I don't know that Jorgie heard it. I remember going through the call because they're both arguing about, like, well, was there a whistle? Was there not? Horse collar tackles happen in the heat of the moment. When you're doing the other stuff, that's where it's like, okay, maybe, that could be an issue of a dirty play. Hey, a wide receiver's jumping into the air. You run underneath his feet. That's a dirty play in my eyes. You're head hunting. The thing on the kickoff, probably a dirty play. Like you're throwing your head at his head. That's not cool. No one ever gets taught, hey, while you're running down, make sure you spear some
that's
dude.
not part of the game.
Right. The other stuff that I saw Addison do, to me, that's just a guy who's a little extra keyed up.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, well, thank you for talking me back a little bit. I don't have to like it, but at least I understand it a little bit better now. So thank you, Will, for that. It's time now that we move ahead to our Bellagio's Pizza Very Best Player of the Game. We will do that in our next...
Who it could be.
Oh, yeah.
Could be anybody.
There are a number of candidates tonight. It could be... I think it could be at least 4 different guys, but we'll let Will decide who the very best player of the game is, and that'll be next on the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. But first, Will has the weather, brought to you by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
Thanks, Buck. It's 55 degrees and clear in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for 70 degrees and sunny in Eugene when the Ducks take on the Spartans of Michigan State next Friday.
Don't let the game play you. Sports betting is popular among Oregonians.
Throws, end zone, caught, touchdown. Trayshawn Holden with his 7th touchdown reception of the year.
It's time for the Bellagio's Pizza Very Best Player of the Game. Pay attention. Our expert panel will select the very best player of the game. And when you hear the text to win cue in the noon hour of Monday's Danny and Dusty Show, you could win a free pizza from Bellagio's.
That's right. You heard our man Vic with the imaging there. It is time for our Bellagio's Pizza very best player of the game. And for that, we let our esteemed analyst, and now this evening, our esteemed producer as well, Will Ortner, who is double fisting, if you will, not with the beverages, but with the duties on postgame tonight. Will, what do you have for our Bellagio's Pizza very best player of the game? Number of options. Who did you consider, and who did you end up landing on?
For me, there were a couple different options here. I felt like Jordan James had a very good game. 20 attempts, 103 yards, touchdown, 5.2 per carry. You go through on the defensive side of the football, right? I think that Derek Harmon, he's always an animal. I know that Jordan Birch, when you look at his total stats, you're like, it's only 2 tackles. But, oh, wait, they're both for a loss, and there's a sack in there. That's a pretty good job.
He had a big impact game.
They're also all solos, right? So he's someone that I would have thought about, but I feel bad. I'm already going to this guy for his second time this year. But then again, it felt like Dylan Gabriel went to him for his second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth times. I've got Tez Johnson. Dude had 11 catches on 14 targets.
11 slices of Bellagio's.
11. The next closest person to him had 5. So it's become clear that he is a favorite target for Dylan Gabriel. He had 121 yards, 2 touchdowns, long of 52, 72 yak. He would have had a third touchdown. His only blemish, his only mistake is not putting that ball on Patrick Herbert. He would have done everything in this game. So to me, it has to be Tez Johnson. I know that we've already gone there, and it feels like it's a little bit old hat, but at the same time, when you go out and you perform that way, you have to get a game ball.
And you'd know this better than I would, but do you also get the sense that he brings a little bit of extra juice for this team too? It feels like when I see him out there, when I see some of either the talking he's doing or just it feels not in your face, but he seems like he's got this swagger about him that kind of gets everybody else going. Do you get that intangible from him too?
Yeah, I feel like he's a vibes guy. Like when you just look at Tez Johnson, like to me, when he's with the Knicks family and Bo is getting drafted, who's the guy that's like sitting around, but he's all smiles? All the family is trying to be by him. It felt like everyone, like it's Bo's big moment. So Bo's all stressed out and he's next to his wife. He's next to his mom and dad and he's stressed. And then all the rest of like the brothers and sisters, they're all with Tez. And Tez's got a big old smile. Tez knows it's all going to work out and it's going to be set up perfectly for Bo. He knows Bo's going to be successful wherever he goes. And Bo's starting to become that. It feels like Tez is a positive vibes guy. And that's someone that you always want to be around. So when you make a big play, or in this case, when Tez makes a big play, all the rest of the guys want to go and celebrate with him because he's so up all the time.
Well, I think that the way that he has progressed, you mentioned it, he has a touchdown in every game this season. Tonight he goes 11 for 121, 2 more touchdowns. Very well could have or should have had that passing touchdown. I mean, he might be the team MVP at this point of the season.
To me, he is.
And there's a long ways to go. But I also look up and down this roster, and I'm not sure that anybody put as much out there as he did tonight. I think it's an excellent pick. The very best player of the game is Tez Johnson. Remember that. And when you hear the text to win cue in the noon hour of Monday's Danny and Dusty Show, you could win a free delicious pizza from Bellagio's. I referenced this with Dusty when we talked to him. I know Ortner was all over it. Did you see the finish in Tuscaloosa tonight?
Ooh.
We got to get to that game, the 2 versus 4 matchup, plus another upset in the SEC, as well as what's been going on in the top 25 scoreboard overall. Plenty to talk about. A lot of it impacts the Ducks, and we will get to that next on the Pacific Office Automation post-game scoreboard show. But first, we kick it back over to Will for weather, brought to you by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online. Pickup or delivery at victorricos.com.
Thank you, Buck. It's 55 degrees and clear in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for 70 degrees and sunny next Friday in Eugene when the Ducks take on the Spartans of Michigan State.
The Fan 411.
Join Isaac and Suk for a football party at the Stadium Sports Bar and Grill at A&A. Primetime will be live from 3 to 7 p.m. on Monday night, October 7th, while you watch the game on the region's largest video wall. Great food, drinks, wing specials, and more are all part of the fun. And so is the A&A Sportsbook, where you can bet on pro and college football. For more information on the Isaac and Suk football party at A&A, go to 1080thefan.com.
That's the Fan 411.
Duck fans, game day is here, and you need fuel to cheer on Oregon. Hey, it's Dusty, and at Victorico's Mexican Food, we know the game doesn't wait, so neither should you. Swing by before kickoff for mouth-watering burritos, tacos, quesadillas, and more. All served up fast and with the quality you crave. Whether you're tailgating or watching from home, Victorico's has you covered. Get in, get out, and get back to the action. Fueling Duck fans with restaurant-quality food, ready in no time. Pick up in-store or order for takeout or delivery at victoricos.com.
Bellagio's Pizza, Northwest owned and operated since 1996. This is Mike Barrett. Bellagio's has been a family favorite of ours for years. I love that they're local, that they give back to the community, to schools, to organizations. But mostly I love that Bellagio's Pizza is so good. If you've had it, you know what I'm talking about. The dough and sauce are still made fresh in Wilsonville every day. They've stayed true to their process and you can taste it. 13 locations in our area. Bellagio's Pizza, the very best.
We are the Elks. Oregon Elks Lodges donate over $15 million to the community each year to support veterans, children with disabilities, and those in need. Oregon Elks Lodges are where neighbors unite, families share meals, and children thrive. To learn how to start your journey as an elk, visit www.discoverelks.org today. This message sponsored by the Oregon State Elks Association, the Oregon Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
Do you have 3 ex-wives and your current trophy wife wants a life insurance policy 3 times the size of the policies you had to purchase for your previous mistakes? If so, you need to call Big Lou at Term Provider, 800-700-6898. Big Lou is intimately familiar with your problems, and if you're 50 or 60 years old and in reasonably good health, a $1 million policy should only cost about $100 to $200 per month. Big Lou may have a solution for your previous policies as well. You may even save enough money to lighten the load on your new $1 million policy. Remember, call Big Lou. He's like you, except he's only on number 2. Call Term Provider at 800-700-6898. That's 800-700-6898. For $1 million in term life insurance that you can live with. Call Big Lou at 800-700-6898. 800-700-6898.
4th down and a long break. Garbers from the Oregon 45. Snap. They're going to run a play. Looks to throw. Over the middle. It is almost. It might have been picked. And it was.
This is the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Welcome back to the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show. No nail-biting in tonight's game between Oregon and UCLA. The Ducks 34-13 winners. They win by 21. Number 8 team in the land improves to 4-0 on the season. But there was plenty to talk about in the top 10 today. We saw close games. We saw blowouts. We saw an upset. We saw a near upset on Friday. Plenty to talk about, but I think it all has to start, Will, with the 2-4 Georgia versus Alabama game. My goodness, if you didn't see it, Alabama went up early, went up big. It was 30-7 or 33-7. I'm not sure if
30-7.
30-7 was as high as it got. So 23 points. Georgia came all the way back to take the lead 34-33 with about 2:16 to play. And then Alabama gets the ball back after a touchback. One play on offense. It's Jalen Milroe to the 17-year-old freshman Ryan Williams, who has one of the more incredible collegiate touchdown catches in recent memory that I can. I mean, I don't want to be like too recency biased here and say one of the greatest catches you'll ever see, but he made the catch jumping, turning, and spinning away from where it was coming, landed, then put a second spin move on 2 defenders and somehow was able to hit the gas around the 20-yard line and just burn the guys for the game-winning touchdown. Carson Beck on Georgia's side still had about 2 minutes left to try and answer, but throws a pick in the end zone. By the way, to another freshman, Devontae Smith for Alabama. So the Crimson Tide in winning a wild one. But also today, Will, we saw Ole Miss lose to Kentucky. Kentucky put a scare into Georgia a couple weeks ago, and today they actually get the job done. Stoops over Kiffin, 20-17 in Oxford, an absolutely huge game. Then you see Miami on Friday night. They survive a Hail Mary. A lot of people, it was called on the field to be a touchdown for Virginia Tech. It looked like the number 7 team in the country lost as well. All this carnage, all these close games. What do you make from what the top of the college football landscape looks like right now?
Well, what I make is it's classic. Oh my goodness, look at how good the SEC is, or look at how good the Big Ten is. All these teams are at the top. How are we ever going to get it to a 12-team playoff? And then it's like, oh yeah, they're college kids. They're going to find a way to lose. Like, these teams all have to play each other. I'll tell you what, right now, I saw a lot of fight out of Georgia. I would have thought that they would have just turned tail and tucked it in and been done.
Dude, they were down 28-0 before they even got off the bus.
Before they even blinked.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, with Kirby Smart, I'm sure he's going to get them fired up and ready to go, though, because you can't start out that slow as Georgia. If Georgia doesn't start out that slow, that game is back and forth all the way through. Yep. And it wasn't like Alabama was hitting them with trick plays or fluky plays. Alabama was just beating them. Like, Jalen Milroe looked like he should be the Heisman. Now, obviously, I think you're going to go through and you start talking about a certain running back out at Boise State. Maybe Milroe isn't a shoo-in for the award, but it just feels like if Georgia doesn't come in sleepwalking, they take care of business, and that might have been a closer game, or they might have even walked away with a win. Carson Beck, 3 interceptions. That's bad, man. That can't happen.
I want to do a little Heisman talk with you in the next segment, but it is late/early. I apologize. Clearly, the Diet Coke and Red Bull just was not quite enough. But, Will, there are 19 teams left who are undefeated at this point in the season. And you know, I think we can kind of agree that, obviously, the preseason rankings serve a purpose. They get people talking.
Right.
But we don't really know until we're at about this point and we have a little bit more substantive idea what teams are all about. Let me read you the 19 teams, and then I want you to tell me roughly, or I'll go through a little exercise with you, but keeping in mind where you think Oregon should go among this mix if we were to just start over from scratch now. Your undefeated teams are Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, Tennessee, Miami, barely, Oregon, barely, Penn State, Mizzou, Iowa State, BYU, Indiana, look at that, UNLV, Pitt, James Madison, Liberty, Navy, Rutgers, Duke, and Army. So I think that we can kind of rule out probably the bottom 8 of those, or maybe even bottom 10 of those. But if you're starting over right now, who's your number 1? Is it still Texas, or is it somebody else after today?
Well, I just want to say I've been told never to rule out America's military. So Army and Navy, like, they are our finest soldiers. They might be our finest football players. So I'm never going to rule them out from coming in and absolutely causing chaos.
Hats off to our service academies.
Right. I think I have to go Alabama.
Yeah,
I get it.
I would think I would have to.
You
also.
won at home. But DeBoer has proven that he can be successful, and he can almost be successful at the drop of a hat. He designs the offense around his quarterback.
Yeah.
Like, his strength with Michael Penix was, we're going to have him sit in the pocket, and he's going to pick people apart. Jalen Milroe is a completely different player. Now, that being said, he can throw as good of a deep ball as anybody, but you design an offense now where your quarterback is running, and he's running all the time. He was your top back. He had 16 carries in this game, 117 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. That's not including his passing stat
He's
line.
a dude.
He's getting better passing, by the way. Last year, it felt like if it wasn't a deep play, he wasn't going to complete it. It feels like this year he's starting to do better at the underneath stuff as well. So I think Alabama, their defense is solid. Their offensive line, now healthy, looks like you are a team that's going to be able to keep Milroe upright in the pocket. And then that guy's just such an X factor. Also, you have maybe the best wide receiver in college football right now, and he's 17.
And that's unbelievable.
Insane.
So first of all, if you haven't seen the highlights of this game, you need to. But Ryan Williams specifically is a guy that needs to be on your radar because he looks like he might be, like you said, the best receiver in the country. Okay, so if Alabama's one, Oregon's two then?
No.
So, but how
No.
how far down? Because we don't have to do this for every team, obviously. But is Texas next?
Yeah, probably Texas.
Texas or Ohio State?
I'm actually higher on Tennessee than most people are.
Okay, fair enough.
I know Ohio State is good, but for me, when it comes to rankings, I do that cheap thing where it's like you have to show me.
Sure,
you know?
and they don't have that yet. They don't
No,
have that win yet.
And Oregon doesn't either.
No.
Now, Ohio State's looked a lot better against the opponents that they've gone against than Oregon has. I still feel like once Oregon made the move to get Poncho back at guard or at center, that's been the biggest key in their offense kind of unlocking. But there still seems to be some things that maybe you're playing it right now on that 80% mark where you're converting on 80%, you're on pro, but you're not quite to that all-American level yet when you're playing like video games, right? If you're playing college football 25, you're playing on pro level right now. There's still more levels for you to unlock and to go through in this offense, and I don't necessarily know that it's Will Stein's fault. I don't know that it's Gabriel's fault. I don't know that it's the offensive line, wide receivers, tight ends, running backs. I think it's a collection of everybody. Like Gabriel wasn't comfortable early. So is he just going to Tez because he knows Tez is his most likely guy to be open? So now he's become too locked in on Tez and he's not looking at his other wide receivers. Is that just how Dylan Gabriel is? Like Tom Brady used to find, hey, this is my favorite wide receiver. I'm going to force feed him the ball from Wes Welker to
Until someone
Randy
takes him away.
Moss to Edelman, right? Could that be it? Running the football wise, it feels like in moments or for most of the game, you're able to run the football with ease. But I think Dusty said this pretty good in his interview with us. It felt like once you got into the red zone, they were like, well, we're going to go back to that throwing game. You throw to open up the run. Well, you were running the ball fine all game.
Yeah.
Why don't you trust them? Well, that's because your offensive line looked like garbage for the first 6 quarters, right?
Yeah.
So how does the offensive line get everyone to trust them again? How does Jordan James get everyone to trust him again that he needs to have the ball in those big key third down and short situations or in the red zone, in those money down spots? So I think that Oregon has continued to show signs of improvement. But if you turn a blind eye to the mistakes that keep happening or to the reasons why you don't finish drives in the end zone and instead you finish getting 3, I think that you're missing a full picture. I know we get hammered all the time, like Buck and Will are big homers. I don't know that could be further from the truth necessarily.
I think listen, I went there. I'm a Ducks fan, but at the same time, I think I'm a pretty harsh critic because I expect a lot out of the program.
Right. And so I think it's fair to say there are a lot of good things. There are still things that need to be cleaned up.
100%. Well, you mentioned Dylan Gabriel, some of the things that he's been doing and been doing well. He was the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy going into the season. That is no longer the case. There are a handful of guys nationwide that are making a case, and I think tonight is a good night to get into who some of those are and who belongs at the top of the heap in those rankings. And does Gabriel still have a chance? We'll get to that next on the Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. But first, it's time for Weather with Will, brought to you by Victor Rico's Mexican Food. Order Victor Rico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victorricos.com.
Thanks, Buck. It's 55 degrees and clear in Portland. The Ducks post-game forecast calls for 70 degrees and sunny in Eugene. That's when the Ducks take on the Spartans of Michigan State next Friday.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be a
edge. Left hash. Basement. Kick on the way. Plenty long and plenty good.
This is the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show on the Odyssey app and your home for Ducks football. 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Good morning. It's 1:20 a.m. and Will and I are tired, but the Ducks are winners. 34-13 the final. The number 8 Oregon Ducks might just be moving up in the rankings this week, considering Ole Miss goes down. Miami gets a scare. I don't think they're going to pass Georgia, but I could be wrong about that. What I am interested in is the Heisman Trophy race, and I think it's a good time, much like us talking about if you were to re-rank all the teams now, ranking all the players now. Dylan Gabriel was the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy coming into the season. Going into last week, it was Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Nico Iamaleava, and Dylan Gabriel, and then Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck after that. Little bit different this week. Now, already Vegas Insider, they do a pretty good job keeping odds current. It appears that Jalen Milroe has now surged ahead to be the favorite to win it, anywhere between plus 175 to plus 225. But basically, he's about 2-1 to win the trophy now, ahead of Cam Ward, who is anywhere between 5 and 6-1. After that, third in the rankings right now, Travis Hunter, a guy who I think a lot of people didn't give a chance to early on, not because of what he is or what he can do, but because he plays for Colorado, and that usually it goes to best player, best team type of scenario. It's almost never somebody who is featured on defensive side of the ball. I can't remember the last time it was a wide receiver either, and so it seems like
Devonta Smith.
That's right, it was Devonta Smith.
But after Devonta Smith, it's a long time.
You got to go back a while. You're right though. That's a great call on Devonta Smith. But now you mentioned it earlier. He's playing like 120 snaps a game. He's playing almost every single play on offense and defense. He is the third favorite to win the Heisman right now, followed by the dude whose eye-popping stats you were just talking about, Ashton Genty. So how do you look at those four dudes right now? If you had a vote, who would get it?
Right now, at this point in the season, it would be Genty. I mean, he has the best stat line. In 4 games, he has over 800 yards. He has 13 total touchdowns.
Yeah.
Like, the dude is a savage. The problem for Genty and the problem for Travis Hunter is they have to keep doing it at this rate.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to get the benefit of the doubt that everyone else is.
You won't get the benefit of the ranking, the wins, the opponents, all that.
Quinn Ewers has missed the last 2 games. If Quinn Ewers comes back, plays the rest of the way, averages around 300 yards per game, which is possible.
And wins the SEC.
And he smacks Oklahoma, and he smacks Georgia, who are both on his schedule. And I don't remember the rest of Texas's schedule on my head, but let's say that they go into the SEC and they play Alabama, and he smacks Alabama too. Quinn Ewers is going to have wins against Michigan.
They do not get
Big House.
Alabama regular season.
So let's say they play him in the title game. Let's throw that in there. That means that at Texas, Quinn Ewers would have wins in the Big House. He'd have a win against Georgia. He'd have a win against Oklahoma. And he'd have a win against Alabama. And he'd win the SEC. He can still win the title. But if, Travis Hunter goes out there, he misses 2 games. He still plays 130 snaps or whatever. But Colorado is a 6-7 win team. Even at 8. I don't know that he's able to win unless he gets a massive, and I mean massive, push from media, which it is starting to go that way.
Or unless nobody else really
jumps out.
Like really wants it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't want to say wants it. Obviously, everybody wants it. But if there isn't somebody else who is kind of taking a stranglehold of it, if other people's game-to-game stats are inconsistent or what have you, because then I think you can look at just the totality. I mean, if the trophy was truly about like who is contributing the most to their team, it would have to be him because he's doing double what everybody else is. It's
100%.
Like Shohei Ohtani or something like that.
He's the most valuable player. Well, I think the other argument is you could say that it's Ashton Genty because without him, Boise State is an average Mountain West team.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't do anything. Like Madsen, like he's fine. He's a fine quarterback. Their defense is okay. They can kind of stop teams. Ashton Genty, on their first drive of the game, had all 75 yards, and he did it on 4 touches. That's what he does. There are multiple times in multiple games where they have shown the stat bug where it's like Ashton Genty, 200 yards. Other team rushing yards, 90. Entire other team.
Yeah.
Right? And so those are the two most valuable players. Like, would Alabama be as good as they are without Jalen Milroe? Probably not. Would they still be a pretty darn good team?
Probably.
Yeah, they'd be a pretty darn good team. So they need a lot of help if they're going to win it, and they have to stay healthy all the way through. Whereas, like, when you look at, like, Nico, if Nico has a big game when they play Georgia and he has a big game when they play Alabama, he's going to win the Heisman.
People talk about Heisman moments all the time. If you bank a couple of those in big wins, yeah, it's still anybody's for the taking. Frankly, if Gabriel goes out and beats Ohio State with a 4-touchdown performance and then goes and wins the Big Ten title game, or let's say he goes into the big house and throws for 3 touchdowns and runs for another, like, I'm not saying it's a sure thing, but if they are looking at 10 or 11-0 towards the end of the season and he's still putting up these accuracy numbers and putting up these touchdowns, like, he'll be in the conversation too.
100%. And so it's too early right now because injuries can happen all the time. But for my money, there are going to be other players, Jalen Milroe, Dylan Gabriel, Nico, even Carson Beck, that are going to have bigger games and more of them than some of the other players, and that's going to set them up for a really good spot. Like, even Cam Ward and Cade Klubnik, like, Klubnik didn't look good against Georgia, and then he's not going to have another team that he faces that is anywhere near the caliber of his team until he gets to play Miami, which would have to be in an ACC title game.
Yep.
It's the same thing for Cam Ward, where Jalen Milroe, he just went against Georgia. He's going to get an opportunity to go against LSU and Tennessee. I don't think they get Ole Miss this year, but that's 2 more big time games before you even get into the postseason. So there's just more games, and you can make the argument. I think Milroe's already had his Heisman moment. That throw, you have just given up a big lead. He makes a great throw. Now his wide receiver makes a good play.
But even some of his runs too today. I mean,
oh my goodness,
he had
a game changer.
He had a Heisman performance game today. It was just it was outstanding. All right, coming up, we turn the page to Michigan State, a Friday game coming up for the Oregon Ducks, what their opponent did against Ohio State today, and who's getting College Game Day? That's coming up next as we wrap up the show. Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. But first, Will has the weather, brought to you by Victorico's Mexican Food. Order Victorico's for your game day celebration in-store or online for pickup or delivery at victoricos.com.
55 degrees and clear in Portland. The Ducks postgame forecast calls for 70 degrees and sunny in Eugene when the Ducks take on the Spartans of Michigan State next Friday.
hold it. Back to throw Gabriel. Has some time, sprints to his left, throws into the end zone. It's caught! How did he get that through to Tez Johnson? Through traffic.
Highlights, scores, and more. This is the Pacific Office Automation Postgame Scoreboard Show on the Odyssey app and Portland's sports leader, 1080 The Fan. Pacific Office Automation. Problem solved.
Welcome back. Final segment of the early morning Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show. The Oregon Ducks winners, 34-13. They take care of business down in Pasadena. They improve to 4-0 on the season and likely to be moving up from that number 8 ranking to 7 or even 6 after a couple teams ahead of them falter. But now it's time for us to turn the page to Michigan State. Before we do, though, it's time that I give you, the listeners, for one more time, the Ducks Game Day secret score.
Ducks Game Day secret score.
The Ducks Game Day secret score is 172. That's 172. It's how many total yards Oregon's defense allowed today. You don't need to know what the number represents, but you need to have that number of 172 when you hear that cue to call in the 7 a.m. hour of Monday morning's Dirt and Sprague, and you could win the $100 gift card to Laurelhurst Market. It's more than just your friendly neighborhood steakhouse. Make your reservation today at laurelhurstmarket.com. The Fightin' Jonathan Smiths coming to Autzen Stadium next week. It's a Friday game, a 6 o'clock game. And will the Michigan State Spartans, they started the season 3-0. They've since faltered. They lost a close one at Boston College. They got blown out today, maybe as expected, by Ohio State. But you mentioned just in the break before we came back on here, opening line 25.5 in favor of the Ducks, which, funny enough, is almost exactly where the Oregon-UCLA line was going into tonight's game. It got a little bit closer back to around 24 by kickoff, but I know it got as high as 26 as well. So bookmakers essentially saying another late game, another not-so-great opponent. They're seeing almost exactly the same thing. When you look ahead to next week, I know you're not going to be with us next week. You'll be getting shaboozy at a wedding. But
My brother's wedding.
Yeah, well, no, I didn't say you were getting married, but
I'm the best man.
There you go. You have to be there, and you're the best Pacific Office Automation postgame scoreboard show analyst as well. So you got that code for you as well. But Will, when you look at next week's game compared to this week's game, is there a whole lot that's different? I mean, I personally haven't watched a lot of Michigan State this season. What do you think the Ducks are going to be looking at going into next week?
Unfortunately, I'm a sicko, and I have actually watched a chunk or two of Michigan State play this year. Look, you're going to see Aiden Childs, and you're going to see Jonathan Smith, and it feels like to me this is an opportunity for Oregon to really silence a lot of people, because I think there's going to be a lot of talk from national media of, well, this Oregon team, they've shown that they're susceptible, and wouldn't the guy who went to Oregon State with the quarterback that went up against them last year know how to attack him? He's beat him twice before, technically. So I think that...
Yeah, you can hear the narratives now, can't you?
You can already hear it a little bit. And so I think for Oregon, it would be big to just go in and shut them up right away. Your first drive on offense, go down and score a touchdown. Your first drive on defense, let Birch, let Harmon, let Tatum Tuioti get after Aiden Childs. He has shown early on in this season that he is the quintessential young quarterback. You see moments of greatness where it's like, wow, Michigan State is really lucky. I see why Oregon State fans are so upset that he left them. And then you have moments where you go, Oregon State, man, you dodged a bullet. That kid can struggle. So if you can put a pass rush on him with this secondary and their ability that they've shown to create turnovers, I think that you can end this game in the second quarter. And then you don't have to deal with some of the nonsense that you had to deal with UCLA. If Oregon just comes out, they don't throw that interception on the goal line, and you drive down, you score a touchdown in the third quarter, none of the rest of it matters, because we'd say, oh, well, the game was already over. But because you throw the interception and UCLA is kind of hanging around, they're never in any real situation where you thought, well, UCLA might win this, but you definitely didn't like that they weren't getting blown out. Right? So I think that this is an opportunity for Oregon to finally put on film, hey, we can blow someone out and we can get our guys to the bench and not have to play a lot in the fourth quarter.
No, I totally agree with you there. And that was actually what I was wishing and hoping for today. I mean, I think that you saw them with a chance to go up 35-3 at the half. I think it would have been curtains and people coming off the field a lot earlier. Had it not been